Specifically, not specifically. We're going to talk about, first off, what are some things you can do, like during this first session. I'm going to talk a little bit more on overall picture type stuff. Setting the scene, things that you need to be knowledgeable about or understand as far as the sales process. And then in the second session, I'm going to actually go through my whole presentation that I use with sellers, step by step by step by step by step, so you can see how we're guiding the conversation and guiding the topic to the point where we're ready to get to the sale, and it's a simple decision. And then from there, pushing the seller to make a decision. That is going to lead right into number one, and that is the objective of the sales call. The objective of the sales call, most people, let me back up here. When I got out of college, I sold windows and siding for a company out of College Park, and had mixed success, sometimes good, sometimes bad. But when I first started selling, I thought every sales call that I was going into, I was trying to get that person, I was trying to sell them something, on an idea, on a product, on moving forward, and I never wanted to close the door. So I would always go in there with the objective to sell, but at the end of the day, at least 50%, probably more like 80% of the time, I'd walk out of there hoping that the people would call me, or they're on my list to follow up with. What I found was I'm really awful at follow-up. Follow-up is not something that I'm very good with. And so, as time went on and I spent more time in sales, I realized that the objective in any sales call is not a yes. Believe it or not, I'm not trying to get a yes out of them. I'm not even trying to get a maybe. I'm trying to get an answer. I want a yes or a no. That's it. And a no is totally okay. I would much rather have a no, because I already know that I'm not good at follow-up. So if they tell me no, I don't have to think about them. I don't have to worry about them anymore. I can move on to the next lead, next opportunity. And that's it. So the objective of any sales call, anytime you're going in to visit with somebody and make an offer on their property, the objective is for them to say yes or say no. As soon as I realized that in my own sales, my own sales career, all of a sudden, my closing percentage went from 10% to like 40%. I didn't change anything except that I wanted them to tell me no. I wouldn't leave there without an answer, and it changed everything. Okay, so that's the objective. You want to go into this thing understanding that there's a likelihood that they're going to say no, and you welcome it. What you don't want is maybe, or no answer at all. Yes or no is perfect. Anything else is unacceptable. Okay, so there's our objective. The second thing that you got to realize before we even talk about the process of selling and the presentation or anything like that is that we want to change the conversation. We want to structure the conversation in such a way that we are not talking about price. Price is going to be part of it, of course it is. But we need to separate ourselves from the competition in other ways, so that a seller's looking at us and saying, they're a lot more professional than the other guy I talked to. He really seems to have it together. I really like this guy. I really like his team. I really like his company. His price seems a little bit lower than the other guy, but you know what? I bet you he's going to close. I guarantee it. And how about that testimonial? And oh my gosh, I really like that. You want to create this mountain of momentum so that by the time you're talking about price, it's just one of 100 different items. There's a real problem in the real estate industry, and that is that most of your competition is going to be unprofessional, unreliable, and if they're both of those things, they still sometimes will beat you out of a deal because they're willing to pay a little bit more or promise to pay a little bit more. In addition, we as investors, we're looking for the lowest price or the best price we can on an investment, and a lot of times the seller has the option of all the real estate agents in the world to list their property and promises that it'll sell quickly at a price much more than we're willing to pay. So this is a little bit of a monument to overcome. Here's some things that you can do to make sure that, like, if they're going to sell and they want to sell quickly and they're going to sell to an investor, number one, they're going to sell to you, and they're going to think twice about hiring a real estate agent to list their property, and you're going to be, presented as their best option. So this is all about framing the conversation, all right? So the first thing I do is I'm going to go in prepared. So what do I mean by preparing? All right. There's a couple things that I go in with. I go into a folder with a folder for every property. My company, we call them credibility folders, but it's just a bifold. It opens up. It's got my logo on it. It's got my business card inside, little information about my company, all of my contact information, all that kind of stuff. The basic stuff that you'd see in pretty much any sales organization or whatever. But in addition, I'm going in there with contracts. They're already made out. They're already filled out. It's got the seller's name, the property address. Doesn't have the purchase price, but it's got the date. It's got my information. I already signed the contract. It's ready to go. All I have to do is pull it out and put it in front of them. I also am putting in there, I'm putting the 3 comps that I'm going to be using later on in the presentation. So it's printed out. It's information about each of the properties, maybe a couple pictures. I might get it off of Zillow or Trulia or off of the MLS if you have access there. You can do this off of REI 360. You can get a list of comps, things like that. But I want to have my comps ready, and they're specifically selected comps. It's not everything that's sold. It's specific comps. Okay, so we got those 3. I want to have the public record information about the property that we're looking at. Okay, this is important if you are going in there on a negotiation and it says, Tom Jones is the owner of the property and Mary Smith is the person meeting you there. Why? What's the difference? You have to know, okay? Then the last thing that I have is a manila folder. And in the manila folder is some little numbers that are scratched on the inside. I pull my comps and I have a number walking into the property before I even look at it. The most I can pay is X amount of dollars minus construction. In addition to that, in that manila folder is my construction checklist. It's the same one from REI 360. You can print it out. You just walk through the house and check, 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 and gives me a quick balance. That's what I'm going to use to deduct from my bottom line number, my bottom line offer price. So here's what this stuff does. I've got my credibility packet. I'm going to make some quick notes here. The credibility packet, again, it's going to have property info, company info, and in addition to info, it's going to have contact info, contact numbers. It's going to have a business card, contract, comps. I mean, this is a lot of information that you're going loaded in to this meeting. In the past, I thought this was an awful lot to prepare for. 5% of the time, the seller doesn't even show up, and I got this credibility pack with all this stuff, and it's like, man, why did I spend so much time? I look at every property as $25,000 to $30,000. That's what it is. An hour to prepare is not much for $30,000. That's a pretty good investment of time. So, here's my preparation. I got the credibility packet. In addition, I have my manila folder. Excuse my spelling errors. This is going to have my bottom line number, and it's going to have my construction breakdown. Okay, I'm prepared. This right here, just this credibility packet, just this information, it's going to separate you so far from your competition. They're going to look at you and say, my goodness, he knows what he's talking about. He came in here, he's not just throwing a number, pulling it off the top of his head. This construction breakdown alone has helped me close so many deals because people will say, there's no way there's $35,000 in construction needed on this house. Well, ma'am, how much do you think it would cost to remodel your bathroom? I don't know, $6,000? Well, that's a really cheap bathroom, but okay, I'll give that. I've got $3,500 budgeted. These are my costs. I'm not, beating you up on these prices. How much would you pay for a kitchen? Oh, 25 grand? Yeah, I have, 11,000. So it's reasonable numbers that when you look at it and they say, oh man, 35 grand is a huge number, except that what you're doing for that number is so much work. When you break it down, that gets rid of that objection right off the top. You just want to prepare, okay? In addition, when you're separating yourself from the competition, you got to make sure that when you're coming in there, you're presentable, because most of the people that are in this business are not going to be. You don't have to dress up in a suit. You look better than I do today. But wear a nice shirt, button-down shirt, put a smile on your face, keep your hair cut. Don't go in there looking like a bum. You want to be comfortable. You want to, sometimes you're going to be crawling through houses that aren't so nice, but you want to be clean, comfortable, and presentable. That's easy enough. You also want to acknowledge, this is something that I do that really helps a lot, is acknowledge your competition. Not necessarily other investors, but realtors for sure. I will tell, I'll tell people, usually it's over the phone call, on the first phone call, I might not be the best option for you. I'm an investor, I'm in the business to make money. That's my objective here, and I help a lot of people by helping them out of situations that, I'm the best option. But that's not everybody. That's why people go and list with an agent. If an agent is their best option, then it is. But at least acknowledge that may be the case. What we have to offer is a specific solution to their problem. We can close quickly for cash and get them out of a difficult situation in their life, or difficult property, or whatever it is. We can solve a problem that oftentimes an agent cannot. Okay? So these are things that I'm talking to the seller about, both on the phone, when I meet them in person, as I'm presenting them with the packet, when I'm going through the whole process and explaining everything that's going on. All right? This is the basics. And I'm gonna cheat here because I made some notes on what I wanted to talk about tonight, and I want to make sure I'm covering everything. Yeah, that's it for here. That's it as far as separating yourself from the competition. You guys have questions? I know we got a small crowd here, but this is an opportunity to just jump in and we can do some almost one-on-one training here. Questions, comments, anything for the good of the cause?
Well, I guess since you made the opportunity available, for your bottom line number that you're writing on your middle folder, is 70% of that the repair value?
Nope. It depends on what it's for. What am I doing with this property? I have a specific model that I use for rental properties that I know what the analysis looks like, and it's a spreadsheet. It's actually, the analysis it's on REI 360. It's the rental property calculator, or whatever. But I use that to give me, this is the return on investment that I need. This is the number that I need, and I'll back it out. These are the taxes. This is the rent roll. These are closing costs. And you can break the whole thing down so that the only thing I have to add in there is a construction number. If it's a rehab and retail, 70% won't touch it. 65 cents on the dollar minus construction. And then if I'm wholesaling, I got to take money out from there. All right. So it depends on my exit strategy, the different areas, and that comes back to doing your homework and preparing for this thing. If you're preparing for your appointment and you're trying to retail something that is a wholesale property or a rental property, it's not gonna mesh. There are plenty of properties that are not good deals at 65 cents on the dollar because they're in rental neighborhoods, where investors are paying 40 cents minus construction, So it just depends. Everybody's model is a little bit different. If you got to be confident in what your model is and what is going to work for you, and that's it's different for everybody. You like 70%, that's great. That works. All right. Any other questions?
What comps are you using?
I'm sorry?
What comps are you using?
Again, it depends. I mean, I use the MLS. The e-comps work just fine. But you're saying for the comps that I'm presenting to the seller? Okay. This is a large part of my one-on-one presentation is explaining comparables and comparable sales. I'll go over that just briefly in this session and we'll jump forward. When I'm looking at comparable sales, I'm looking at investor purchased properties. That's what I am. I'm an investor. This is the price range that I'm going to be looking at properties. So, we're not looking at, if the after repair value, retail value of the house is 200 grand, but investors are paying 90,000 is the comp that I'm going to show, because that's comparable for investors. Okay. All right. All right. Now, next, we're prepared. We walk in. We look professional. We look decent. Whatever. And we want to lead into a good conversation. We want to ease into this. If you show up there and you just jump in the house and you start throwing numbers around, it's going to be an uncomfortable night, or it won't be. It'll just be short. With sales, before you get to the actual negotiation and you're actually bantering back and forth on numbers, people buy from people that they like. When all things are equal, people buy from people that they like. Even when all things aren't equal, they still buy from people that they like. If a seller likes you, they'd much rather take less of a price from somebody they like than take more money for somebody they can't stand. It might be counterintuitive, but it's the truth 99% of the time. So start off by having a conversation. When you get there, talk to them. Take a look around the house. If most of the time you're going to be dealing with people that either have a property situation like issue, they've got a situational issue, or they've got a personal issue. So you got to be careful not to pick on those scabs. You go into the house and they got a kitchen that's outdated or leaking pipes, and they live in the property, and you can tell it's not well kept. Listen, don't bash their house. If it's a house they grew up in and it was their parents' property and there's an emotional attachment to it, don't do that. You can talk about the repairs that you'll do without killing their house. So, all right, so when you first get there, you're going to introduce yourself. Hey, my name's Josh. We talk on the phone. Nice to meet you, Mary. What I'd like to do, I explain to them what's going to happen. What I'd like to do is just kind of take a look around the house. If you don't mind, just take me around, show me each room of the property. We'll start upstairs. We'll hit all the rooms upstairs. We'll come down here, go through every room, and then go in the basement and look at everything. Okay? Look at the mechanicals, all that kind of stuff. Great. Follow their lead. Tell them what you want from them, but then follow their lead. And as you walk around, start picking up cues about what they like, what their interests are, and find a common ground. If you're walking through the house and there's a picture of the guy holding up a big fish, I'll bet you've been fishing before. Start talking about fishing. If you're a hunter and there's a deer head on the wall, there you go. Whatever it is, you guys don't have to be best of friends. You don't have to be, holding hands and hugging by the end of the night. But if you can find some common ground to have a conversation and move that familiarity forward, that's what you want to do. You're setting the table to talk about things that can be uncomfortable. You want them to like you before you talk numbers, okay? So for maybe 15 or 20 minutes, as they're walking you around the house, just talk. Don't talk about what you're interested in paying for the house, the way the process works, about the company. Don't talk about any of that. Just talk and get friendly and like them. Figure out what their interests are, what they like, what they don't like. One thing that I will do as we go into the property is point out things that I would change about the house. Not that are awful things. If people know if the roof is falling down in the back bedroom, they know that. They live there. They know it's awful, But if you go into the kitchen and you say, you know what? I'll tell you, this is my biggest obstacle. Going into Grandma's house is the hardest house for me to buy, because Grandma always took care of her house, except the kitchen's a 1950s kitchen. And so I point that out, man, you guys really must have taken care of this kitchen. This is an older kitchen, but man, is it well kept. I can't believe that you got the original refrigerator still in here. And they'll probably laugh about it. And I'll tell them straight up, I would feel so much better if the cabinet doors were falling off here and there's roaches running across the floor. And they're looking at me like I have two heads. But the truth is, I have to do the exact same amount of work and explain it, Hey, I can explain that without bashing the property. You go into the back bedroom, man, this is nice. It's a nice big room. A lot of the houses that are selling now in this neighborhood, especially for the top dollar prices, they put a vaulted ceiling in here. I wonder what that, I think I'd probably install that. I'm just dropping conversational construction, We're talking about other things, but I'm telling them what I'm going to be doing. It's setting their expectation so that when we sit down and I show them the construction numbers, it doesn't blow their mind that, my gosh, this is so much money. So, I mean, that's pretty much it. That's what I'm doing. I'm softening this up. And as we get to the end of the conversation, the last thing I say before we sit down is, hey, do you know a lot about my company? There's not too many people except me that know a lot about my company. So of course they're going to say, no. Well, no, I saw you online or whatever. Well, great. Let's have a seat and I'll introduce you to my company, And that's my lead in. It's a soft lead in. I've set the table. We already have some common things, some things in common. And now it's time for me to, put my best face forward. That's where the whole thing starts. Any questions on that? Nope. I'm going much faster than anticipated here, so I'm going to slow down. We go? Okay. All right. I wasn't going to cover this till the second session, but I'm going to now. We're going to jump right into the presentation. The presentation works in 3 phases. And the first phase is more getting them to like you. That's really what it is. It's going to be, I don't know, an intro, and I don't know, a personal touch, okay? So the first thing that, I have an iPad that I take with me, and I'll flip it open, and it's a PowerPoint presentation. I'm happy to show it to you during the break here. But I'll sit down, and I'll open it up and turn it on. I show them, okay, so the name of my company is We Buy Homes to Fix, and it's got a little logo. It's got my contact information and stuff like that. Next one, we start talking about the company. We're located in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. We also have an office in Columbia, Maryland. And we purchase properties in these different markets. In my market in Philadelphia, we purchase properties all over these different counties. I buy houses as either rental properties, where we buy them, fix them up, and rent them out, or we buy them, fix them up, and sell them. Our main objective as investors, besides making a profit, because everybody's got to pay the bills, but we want to create a nice place to live for good people. Whether it's good people buying the house and moving in that make great neighbors, or we're fixing them up and creating a really nice environment for good tenants to move in. So their neighbors across the street, if I'm going to rent this place, they're not going to be calling you saying, who did you sell this house to? We create really nice properties for the people who buy and rent from us. Now, what are they thinking? This is a nice guy. Why not? You know me, we've talked here a little bit, but I'd like to kind of introduce you to the rest of my team. Next slide is a picture of me with a little bio, picture of my partner Ian from the Philadelphia Marathon. And I stop here and I start talking about Ian. Ian and I have been working together for the last several years. He just finished the Philadelphia Marathon. He raised over $10,000 for this young girl with cancer, and that's where he ran it. He's not even a runner. And in 1 year, he decided, I'm going to run this thing. Found this girl with cancer. He raised over $10,000, and it's awesome. And it's a picture of him at the marathon. It's a true story. It's an awesome situation. My next picture is Jill Gardner, who is my title agent. This is Jill. I'm going to give you her contact information before I leave here. She works for MBA Abstract, who is our title company. I'm sorry, I'm dropping some names here. Very cool. All right. But she is, she's our closer at the title company. I'm going to give you all of her information so that if you have any questions about the title process, where we are, when it comes back, all that kind of stuff, you can call her. In all future, this is an aside, in all future emails that I send, at the bottom of the email under my signature is this woman's phone number. It's to the title company, because I want them, if they have a question, first, not to bug me, but second, it continues credibility. It's like, hey, look, I got nothing to hide. This is what's going on with your property. This is what's going on with the transaction. Please feel free to call them, okay? So, what I'm doing is I'm trying to put a personal face on my company. I want them to see, hey, look, we're good people just like you. We're in this together. Let's hold hands. Let's hold hands to the closing table and everybody make some money, So that's, please. Oh, I'm sorry. I welcome questions, so jump in here. So that's where I'm going with this. I'm presenting my company in a really nice environment. I'm presenting them, I'm a personal face to the company. I want them to be comfortable with who they're dealing with. Usually at the end of the touchy-feely friendship phase of the presentation, I'll ask them, pretty typical in sales, you want to get the person's head nodding up and down as early as possible. The more small yeses you can get out of them, the more big yeses you can get later on. So at this point in the presentation, I'm saying, do we seem like the kind of company you'd be interested in doing business with? Well, of course. Nobody's going to tell you to your face that you're a jerk, even if you are, So yeah, of course, absolutely. I'd love to do business with you guys. Great. So that's phase one, is the intro and the personal touch. I skimmed over something and I forgot that it was, all right. That's the breakdown, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
We've done a lot of.
What's that?
Definitely mentioned the disc, but we've done it at the invitational trainings a few times.
Yeah, that's right. The DISC or DISC personality categorization is an analysis to identify like 4 different types of personalities. And typically personalities are going to range from the really extroverted, big picture, like CEO of company type, where it's really difficult for them to see they can't see the trees because of the forest, as opposed to forest for the trees on the total other end, where you have more accounting and engineering and, much more focused on details and more introverted type personalities. Each of these personality types have things that they value. They have different ways of analyzing a situation. My introduction, my presentation to sellers is geared towards each one of these. There's an argument for the engineer on why it makes more sense to go with me at my price. There's an argument for the person that is a lot more emotionally attached and can be sold on an emotional standpoint where, hey, I really like these guys, why don't I sell to them? To somebody who, is basically each of these personality types is addressed in this presentation, so that regardless of who the person is that needs or wants to sell their property or is making the decision, we have an argument for them on why we're the best option. Okay. This introduction, this personal touch, ends the first part of the presentation. The next part of the presentation is we're going to go into an analytical, and the analytical is numbers. So we're going to look at a couple things. Once I enter this part of the presentation, I'm going to say to them, look, one thing that I kind of like to go over with you, I don't want to spend a lot of time on it, but there's a lot of things that people don't understand about real estate. It's kind of like it's kind of like when you see a number on TV. Like, you ever see this show, Flip This House? Of course, a lot of very popular popular show. You see these numbers. The guy bought the house for $100,000. He put $50,000 into it, sold it for $200,000. He made $50,000. Except there's financing costs and realtor fees and this and this and this, and he actually made 10. And so I say to the seller, look, I want to go over some numbers that are very similar to that. Okay, the first number that I want to look at is the list versus the sales price. I know that you wouldn't believe this, but most properties don't sell for what they're listed at. And we're going to use real estate information from a realtor's perspective because that's where most of the data comes from. If we go with private sales, things like that, these numbers are way more skewed in my favor, so we're not even going to look at that. Most properties only sell for between 94 and 96% of their list price. And that's nationwide, but you can pull this data from Trulia, and there's a couple other sources. You can pull it as actual data from your for your area, for the location that you're looking at this. In my market, towards the end of the year, it's like 93%. In October, November, and December, it's like 93% of the list price is what houses actually settle for. So I bring that up. It's a nice negotiating point. So if you thought that you wanted $100,000 for this house, and so you called up an agent, listed it for $100,000, you're probably only going to get $93,000 as the sales price. Okay, that's the first lead in. All right. The second number that I'm looking at are the concessions. Number of days on market. Okay, the seller's concessions. This is another number that I look at. I have a slide for each one of these that has like a graph. It's a 3D graph. I made the data from, I pulled the information from Trulia, I put it on a graph in Excel, and it's a nice looking image. But it shows visually some nice data. Second thing I talk about is concessions. The average concession, seller's concession in a given market is usually between 3 and 6%. So if you are selling this house for, listing it for 100, now you're down to 93,000, you have a seller's concession of 3%, now you're down to 90% of the list price. So that's something to keep in mind. In addition, what's the average days on market for your property? Or the average house is going to be listed, say January 1st, how long is it going to take before it goes under contract? That's the days on market. And then how long is it going to take before it settles? Typically, in this mortgage market, it takes about 45 days from the time the property goes under the contract to the time it settles. Plus, how long does it take to go under contract? So I've got a graph here that shows maybe 90 days. So average house sits on the market for 90 days. Now you're at 135 days before you actually get paid for this thing. How much is your mortgage payment? That's something to bring in the calculation. You need a mortgage payment. Your mortgage payment's $1,000 a month. That's 3.5 months, $3,500. Now you're getting $86,500 for a $100,000 property list price. And you can see where this is going. I also might take into account, one thing I will bring up is realtors' fees and things like that. But these three right here, these are the analytical argument that these things start getting broken down, the cost, so on and so forth, all right? It's at this point in the conversation that now I'm going to change my argument again. And now I'm going to go with testimonials, okay? I've got a couple testimonials. I'll provide a link here. If you don't mind, we can put a link up for basically the presentation, the testimonials that I use. They're geared specifically towards these different personality types. One testimonial is about how close of a relationship I developed with the seller. One was how quickly the property sold and how much money they put in their pocket. Another is a different argument. But at this point in the presentation, I'm taking some time and I'm going to present them with my iPad. I start talking about the testimonials, and then I'll go like this. You know what? I didn't realize it was so late. Can you give me just 2 minutes? My wife expected me, or I got to go look at something upstairs real quick. I wasn't sure. I think I missed something in the bathroom. Just take a look at these testimonials, and then right after here, there's some frequently asked questions. Take a look at them. I'm just going to, I'll be back in a couple minutes, okay? Leave them alone with the testimonials. Give them a chance to go through everything. Look and, and flip through and see actual pictures of deals that I've done, testimonials, and I mean, I can even put a video in there. I've got a couple of videos from closings of people being happy and all that kind of stuff. It allows them some time to go through these. If you try to read them or you put them in front of them and sit back and wait, they're not going to read them. They just won't. You'll go over it too quickly, and you'll end up missing the opportunity to sell them without having to sell them. Once you come back, as soon as you walk in, oh man, I'm really sorry about that. Thanks for your patience. So how'd you like the testimonials? Really good ones, huh? What was your favorite one? ask them questions, engage them, and build them into the conversation of the testimonial. What was the favorite part? I like to tell one of the testimonials I have in there. I told this story in relation to like some of the other trainings I've done. So it's from a woman who she turned my offer down 3 or 4 different times. I talked the first phone call. I was on the phone with her 45 minutes. Made her an offer. She said, "No way, I can't take that." A week later, she called me back. Told her again, "No, I can't take that." And then maybe 2 days later, she finally said, "All right, why don't you come out and take a look at the property?" I was her only option. We moved her out of the property. We put down a year's worth of deposit on the settlement sheet to pay an agent to move her into an apartment. We hired a moving company to, I bought her groceries at times. So, it was everything I could do to get her end goal. And the end goal was enough money to move her out, put her in an apartment for a year, and enough time to get her back on her feet. All right? She had no other option. Nobody else was going to do that for her. This is an awesome sale. Now the person sitting there, this is a nice guy, really helped her out. You know what? I'll bet he could help me out with this. And, it's building credibility. It's a true story. The woman's picture is right there. She's not a beauty queen or, a model or anything like that. It's a realistic person and story, and it's believable. But the whole point is you're building credibility, building credibility, and then the frequently asked questions that follow right up. So after they're done with the testimonials, I sit back down and start quizzing them. I'll take them right into the frequently asked questions. Then this will bring up all the things that they've been sitting there and holding back. This is this time in the conversation and the presentation that usually is the most beneficial. It's the most beneficial because up until this point, a lot of times they're not saying much. They might be talking about. They might be talking to me about going fishing, but they're not necessarily talking to me about selling their house. Now, all of the things that now we're kind of giving them permission to start asking questions. This is a lead-in to buying questions. The type of frequently asked questions I have is, do you pay retail for properties? I haven't even talked about price yet. This whole time, I just knocked down, even if I'm paying retail, what they're getting might be a heck of a lot closer to retail from me than actually from retail. So that's one of the questions. Another question is, how quickly can you close? Are there any contingencies? Or do you pay as much as a realtor? These are things that are commonly asked. How long do I have to get my stuff out of the house once you close? There's a million questions that will come up that, they're buying questions. They're going to ask these things if they're ready to move forward. And at this point, money's no object, if it's not part of the conversation, they're ready. It's a good way for you to gauge how hot or cold they are. All right? So that gets me through the testimonials and frequently asked questions. All right. This next section is probably the most important one. We want to spend the most time on this part of the presentation. Maybe not the most part, but we're going to start talking numbers now. So at this part of the presentation, I want to start talking about comps. Fannie Mae.
Should we do a break, Josh, before?
I'm sorry? Yeah, I think we should. Let's take a 10-minute break, and we'll come back and
then we'll do this.
yeah, I think that's the best bet. Yeah, is that good?
Hang out with you.
Thanks. Does anybody know who the #1 holder of residential mortgage notes is in the country? One more. What?
Is it Fannie Mae?
There we go. Fannie Mae. Perfect. All right.
Oh, because you wrote it.
This plays a really big part in what people can pay for properties. When you have one lender dictating, the not just the terms, but the process of evaluating a property, it's a big deal. It's a great way for us to take. There's a way for us to take advantage of that, and I don't know. push it to our advantage, let's just say, okay? Here's what I'm talking about. After I've gone through the testimonials, after I've gone through the frequently asked questions, I've gauged the motivation. Jason, would you close that back door, please? Thanks.
There's no door.
Would you close it? Thanks. Thanks. Sorry. I'm sorry, guys. I'm not trying to cut you off, but anyway, after you've gauged, you've talked to them, answered their questions, got them talking. Now it's time to start talking numbers with these people. All right. Now it's time to move to the next phase. They're comfortable with you. They like you. They don't like you. Whatever. They're ready to go. To move into this phase, I want to frame the conversation. We want to frame the conversation, and in the beginning when we first started talking about this, we talked about our competition and keeping them in mind, right? We have really two groups of competition. The first is other investors, and we've pretty much blown them out of the water. There's no way they're walking in with this kind of presentation. They're certainly not as prepared as we are. They're not as professional, and they're not as nice either. You know, let's be honest. We're way more likable than our competition. Now, we're attacking realtors, all right? And the only way to go up against an agent is really numbers and speed. We already started chipping away at the numbers. We were setting the table with the analytics, the days on market, the list versus sales price, the concessions, and we mentioned the cost of hiring a realtor. So we're already chipping away at. Now we're going to frame this conversation on what the house is worth, okay? So we do this by talking about Fannie Mae. And so I'll start by saying to the seller, Ms. Seller, do you know who Fannie Mae is? Probably they heard, I don't know. Okay. Fannie Mae is a government-backed agency that holds 95+% of all of the retail mortgages in the entire country. What's that mean to you? That means that they have a ton of pool. Almost every single mortgage in the country, regardless of whether you're going through one of the big banks or small banks or your local banks, or if you're going through a mortgage company like Quicken Loans or one of the other big retail lenders, they are going to have what are called conforming loans. What's a conforming loan? It's a loan that conforms to Fannie Mae's guidelines because they're going to set the loan up for you, they're going to process it, and they're going to sell this loan to Fannie Mae. It happens almost all the time, okay? I bring this up because what Fannie Mae has established is criteria and a process to evaluate how much a house is worth. Before the market crashed in 2007, 2008, there was a lot of mortgage fraud. People were, they were doing fake comparables. They were comparing properties that weren't, they weren't comparable properties. And so the government stepped in, Fannie Mae stepped in and said, this is how you will evaluate a property. This is very, very important when you're talking about listing your house or selling your house, home values, things like that. Here's what Fannie Mae has stipulated, okay? They're going to start by looking at sold properties. Sold properties is a big deal because guess what? You just told me, hold on here. You told me earlier in the conversation that the house down the street was listed for $143,000. That's how much they were asking for the property. Well, you are right. They are asking that. But when I pulled comps and before I came in here, I noticed that there is nothing that's sold even close to $143,000. So they can ask what they want, but Fannie Mae is not going to underwrite a loan for $143,000 because nothing's sold for that amount. All right. I need to look at sold properties. I'm not looking at the future. I'm looking at things that have already happened. There's sold properties, and they've got to be like properties. What are we talking about when we compare like properties? That means we're talking about properties that have about the same square footage, plus or minus 15%. They've got about the same number of bedrooms and bathrooms. They are about the same type of property. We're not comparing a Colonial to a Cape Cod because a lot of times they're different. They have different values. Most importantly, we're looking at the condition of improvements. I cannot compare your house, though it's in very good condition, I can't compare your house with a 1950s kitchen and bathroom in great condition to this house over here that has a complete renovation that's got, you know, a jacuzzi tub in the bathroom, and they've got granite countertops and stainless steel appliances. It's not the same, okay? So here's what I've done. I've gone through and I've used these Fannie Mae guidelines, and I've looked at other properties in this neighborhood within a very short vicinity from their house. Again, within Fannie Mae guidelines, I have looked at properties that like condition, same number of bedrooms and bathrooms, same type of property. And what Fannie Mae does after they have the sold properties is they're going to take the average of those properties to determine the value, okay? So that means if you have 3 houses, one that sold for $90,000, one that sold for $95,000, and one that sold for $100,000, Fannie Mae is going to say the value of that property is $95,000. This is the appraisal amount. That's the most that they're going to lend, and that is the value that they're going to assign to the building. Do you have any questions about that? I mean, this is what I'm asking, okay? I'm asking this to the seller. Do you have any questions about that? Now, at this point, they'll either shut up, but I really don't want that. What I really want is for them to ask questions about this. I want to pull this out. So I might, if they're quiet, I might say to them, have you ever bought a house getting a mortgage? Sometimes yes, sometimes no, about 50-50. If not, or I'm saying if they have bought a house with a mortgage, I'll bring up, do you remember when you hired the appraisal to come out and take a look at the property? You saw the big report and they printed out their comparables and all this kind of stuff. Yeah, I remember. That's what they were doing. They were creating this appraisal based on Fannie Mae guidelines. You know, I want them to buy into this concept. Is basically what I'm doing. All right? Any questions to this point? All right?
Didn't Fannie Mae just change their guidelines? Or next month?
That's great, but it's not. I'm not worried about what they are, you know, in 6 months or whatever. We're looking at this is part of the conversation with the seller.
Okay.
So we've got these guidelines. Boom. So now we're all in agreement that the value of the property is going to be the average of 3 like properties. Guess who's picking the like properties? That's right. So I've structured the conversation. We're all on the same page on how to value the property. Now I want to analyze the property and make my offer. Here's what that looks like. First, hold on here. I have a visual of this Fannie Mae thing, this Fannie Mae process that I have in the presentation. It looks something like this. Here's my 3 like properties, and here's the value, okay? Right here, and it's comp 1, comp 2, comp 3, and I'm discussing the whole process as I'm talking to them. Yeah, this is how it works, this is how it works. Now it's time to lay out the argument for what I'm willing to pay for the house.
Hey Josh, I think you just drew there, and that, is that per property? Do you do something custom for an offer, or is that just an idea of how it works?
The image that I have,
Or any of the other stuff that you're preparing for?
when I prepare to walk into the property, the PowerPoint presentation changes for every property. I put actual information about the properties in there. Now, that image where it was like comparable 1, 2, and 3, and then we have our value, I don't put exact numbers in that slide. It's just, it's an image. You know, just, it's like a visual so they can get an idea of what it looks like. The next slide, though, is a chart. It looks like this. And remember, we already printed out our comparable sales, right? We can print them out, and we have them ready in our credibility packet. Okay, so first line is market value. Market value is not the bottom line to the seller. We've been trying to push that the entire time that we've been having this conversation. Okay, so in this example, we've got a $95,000 market value. okay? That's number one. Number two, we have, what the heck was it? We have our deduction from list price. In this case, that was it was 7%, right? We talked about that from day one. The average drop from list price is 7%. For round number sake, let's say, what is that, 90 or 63.50, or yeah, all right. And then in addition to that, we have our drop off of from a seller's concession. Let's just say that's 3%. Okay, so that's I don't know, what is that? Just say it's $3,000. I'm going to use some round numbers here. So excuse me, the math is not exactly right. In addition, we have an agent fee. Okay, that's going to be 6%. That's another about $6,000. What else? Oh, days on market. How long does that property have to sit before it sells? They said that their mortgage was $1,000 a month, right? So 3.5 months is what the cost is going to be. The mortgage payments during that is going to be another $3,000 or $3,500. And we have all of these byline items that are beating down this $95,000. To start with, this market value is one that we chose. These are investor sales. And now we're doing the deductions. We're doing deductions from the list price. We're doing deductions for the seller's concession, for the agent fees, for the mortgage payments over this time period. And now we have to put in our profit. Because if we're not listing profit on this bottom line, two things are going to happen. Number one, that you're going to lose credibility. They're not going to believe that you're going to do this for free. Number two, we lose something to drop. Okay? So during this presentation, now I'm going to put our average profit is $10,000. So as I'm doing the presentation, the market value is about $95,000. Okay? $95,000 is the full market value for listing it with an agent. That's what you can expect to get. We have to make some deductions though. Remember when we looked at those graphs, the average price, or the average list versus sales price in this market at this time is 7% drop. 93% of the list price is what the actual sales price ends up being. So we're going to take that off. In addition, the seller's concession, average across the board, 3%. Boom, that gets dropped. In addition, we have agent fees. Like the brokerage fees that the agent's going to charge, 6%. That's coming off. And then you're going to have to hold the thing for an average, because the days on market are going to be 90 days plus another 45 days to get a mortgage. We got $3,500 in addition to that, okay? And then we have to, when I'm calculating my offer price, I obviously have to work in profit here, okay? So that's $10,000. So we've got 9, 18, I'm gonna make this 500, just so it's easier. So this is 19,000, 29,000. So that is 66,000. So our offer here is $66,000. When you present this, after this number, after you lay out the number, just shut up. Shut up, sit back, and let them be the next one to talk. Remember that the whole objective here is to get a yes or no. We are not looking for an accepted offer. We just want a yes or no. That's it. Tony, what were we going to say?
No, sorry.
Okay. All right. So you're laying this out there. Boom. Sit back. It might be uncomfortable for a little bit. And usually they're going to say something like, oh, okay. Yeah, it's a lot less than I anticipated. Thanks for coming out here. Well, wait, hold on a second. We just spent an hour together and you're going to throw me out the door as soon as I give you a number. That's not going to happen like that. We have a relationship. I'm saying this as an aside. I'm not going to say this to their face. And they're usually not going to pick me up and throw me out the door if I've done my job in preparing them for the offer that we're making, preparing them, becoming friendly with them. Usually what will happen is they'll say, oh man, I'd really like to do business with you. I can't take $66,000 for the house. I mean, the house up the street, it's listed for $145,000. I understand, I really do, you know. As I told you before, we're not for everybody. But, you know, I think you're looking at this a little bit the wrong way. We're looking at this as, number one, you know, you told me before I came out here that you're just sick of this property and you want to sell the house. This is the time that you bring back all the things that they told you when you're walking around the property, you're bringing them back up. The reasons why they want to sell. Yeah, they want the money, but that's not the reason. The reason that they want the money is because they needed to move on with their life, or they needed to pay a bill, or they got to get out of the area because their job is relocating, or they're just sick and tired of being here and it's time to go. Whatever that motivation is, now it's time to bring that back up. If they want to close quickly, great, let's talk about that. You know, we discussed this, that if you list this with an agent, because really that's your other alternative. You don't want to deal with the other scumbags that are out there. I think you know that I'm the only investor that you're going to sell this to, right? Yeah, of course. Okay. So if you're going to list this with an agent, you're looking at putting this thing on the market, and you're not even going to have a contract for 3 months. That's not going to fit your needs. I understand what you're saying, but it sounds to me that like the real argument here is that it's this $66,000. If you list it with the agent, it's only going to be $10,000 more, and it's going to be 90 days from now. So what, you know, I can't take away these real calculations. If your question is about they might bring up the $95,000, that's way too low of an evaluation. That's when you pull out your comparables. Well, look, this house sold for this much. This house sold for this much. This house sold for this much. This is where we're getting the evaluation. Then they bring up the deductions for the list price. You know, you have data to support this. This is all part of the argument that you've been building and building and building. And at the end of the day, their argument is here. The $10,000 that you have listed here. Well, the good news is that you don't make the decisions. That's also the bad news, because you can't just click your hands and make this happen. But you know what? You really like Mrs. Jones, or whatever her name is. Ms. Seller, look, here's what I can do for you. I really like this house. It's in a great rental area that I know our company's had a lot of success with in the past. And, you know, I can't make this decision by myself, but I think that if I talk to my partner, he might be willing. I think we might be able to make this number work. What's it going to take here? I mean, obviously, I've got to make a profit on this thing. I can't make $1. You know, that's ridiculous. But I'll tell you what if I talk to him and I could get this down to, like, if we cut our profit in half on this and only made $5,000 on it, would that be something that, you know, if I could get it to that point, would you be willing to move forward tonight? Would that be something you're willing to move forward with? Now's the time when you got to get some banter back and forth. Maybe the answer is no. No? Okay. So you want me to do this for free? What's your real objection? We have to identify that. But a lot of times, more often than not, they'll come back and say, you know, Josh, really, what I really need on this thing, it's $74,000. $74,000. You're $8,000 off. Well, look, I can't move mountains. Let me just see what I can do. I'll talk to my partner. We've already established at $95,000. That's the investor sale. So at $74,000, I'm probably okay. You know, I mean, might not be, but I'm probably okay. What we're looking for at this point in the presentation is a commitment of some kind. If it's a commitment at $74,000, you did your job. If it's a commitment at $100,000, you did your job. But if it's, well, I'm not sure, you know, can you do better than that? That is not what you need. We need a commitment so that we can play off of that, all right? Now, let's say they come back to you and say, yeah, I could probably do, like, let's say I could probably do $75,000. 75 would probably get it done. Now is the time that you need to push. This is really where sales come into this. Okay, $75,000. I want to confirm with you, Ms. Seller, that $75,000, and we have a deal tonight. Is that what you're telling me? Like, there's nobody else you got to talk to, anything like that? Well, I'm not sure. Don't make a fake phone call if we don't have a commitment, because it only works once. All right? Okay, sorry. All right. Yeah.
You go more about the $95,000.
Great.
Skeptical of that number. You're saying it's the investor number.
Yes, all right.
They asking for 100, they're telling you that the market's 140?
I'm throwing numbers out there. They're fake numbers, but let's.
No, but I mean, I'm asking for a range. I mean,
Yeah. Okay, so my calculations on let's use a rehab because it's the easiest to evaluate, all right? My offer on a retail property is 65% of the after repair value minus construction. If I'm going to wholesale this property and assign the contract, I have to take out my assignment fee as well. So what this means is that if you have a completely renovated property that's worth $150,000, let's say, my max offer is going to be what is that, 97.5, right? It's going to be $97,500 minus construction, which will probably be $35,000. I mean, on a rehab. So let's say $35,000. And if I'm wholesaling it and I want to make $5,000, it's another $5,000. So $57,500 is my offer.
okay, I may have missed it, but is that, you've already explained all that about the construction cost, right?
When you go into the house, one of the things that you're doing, one of the packets, it's one of the first things we talked about tonight, is that you're taking in a credibility packet with you that will have certain information in it for the seller. It's going to have information about your company. It'll have contact information. It'll have filled out contracts with the seller's name and your contact information, all that kind of stuff. You're also going to have your own folder, and in that folder, you're going to have a little number that's written down with your highest available offer that you're calculating before you go in the house, and you're going to have a construction form. That construction form is what you're filling out as you're walking through the property and you're talking to the seller. You go into the bedroom, I'm going to replace this, I'm going to do this, and it's a room-by-room calculation. That form is on REI 360, and it's the construction estimator. You can go through, and then you have your construction numbers. They're right there. If the seller says, "Oh, well, that's I can't believe it's going to cost you $35,000 to rehab this house," you can pull this out and say, "Well, I've got $11,000 to do your kitchen. If you go and you do this retail, it's going to cost you $25,000 for the kitchen." That sort of thing. So the construction numbers are part of your evaluation of the property, and they can play a part in the conversation that you have with the seller. They don't always with me. It's one of those things that you run a fine line of insulting them and not. If depending on their emotional attachment to the property, somebody, yeah, go, yeah.
Figure out when you're telling them about what you believe the construction cost is.
I may never. It may be from my own knowledge. I mean, at this point, look, we're looking at these numbers here. This is my presentation to them of what I can offer them. They don't care how much I'm spending on construction. They want to know how much they're getting from the deal. Like they could care less. That's the truth.
They're going to compare apples and oranges because they're going to look at the listing price down the street, which is $150, but that house is liable to be
Absolutely.
in great shape.
Absolutely. Say that again. It's likely to be what?
In good shape.
Well, and that's
And
the.
not need $35,000.
And that can be part of the argument. It ends up being part of the argument only when they bring something like that up. So you're saying there's a house down the street that's listed for $140,000. That's great that it's listed for that. I could list the same house for $1 million and get the exact same results. We're looking at sales, and this is part of the Fannie Mae conversation. Fannie Mae only looks at sold properties. They do not care how much the property is listed for. And unfortunately, or fortunately, we're dealing in an environment where 95% of mortgages are held by Fannie Mae. So almost every loan has to conform to that type of evaluation. Using that type of valuation, here are 3 comparable properties. They're similar condition, similar square footage, they sold recently, and they're in a similar neighborhood. And this is where I'm coming up with the offer. A lot of this is about educating the seller on what you can do and why you can do it, and then making a comparison between your competition. In this case, the competition is a real estate agent. I've done the whole, I've done the presentation where I come out and I do my calculation. I say, this is the highest, this is what I think the house will sell for when I fix it up. This is what my construction's gonna be. There's additional costs and fees that go along with financing and all that. They don't care. Fortunately or unfortunately, they could care less. Here's what they say, $150,000. And then they say, okay, you're gonna spend $35,000 in construction. We're right back to the flip this house thing that they saw on TV.
Well, my thoughts are, as you're doing this.
Yep.
Okay, as you're explaining it, again, you're still talking about 143. Yeah, okay, you'll
Yeah.
explain, yes, that's what it was listed for, it's not what it sells. But they'll be able to point, if they're educated or anything, they'll sit there and say, well, no, that house down there sold for 125.
Like
That's the
condition.
house, in my opinion, that's the one that didn't need repair, didn't need $35,000 for repairs, so that's what I'm saying. When you
Oh, absolutely. There's no, and you know what? That you have that negotiation piece, or you have that ammo. Yeah, absolutely. Look, you know what? You're right. If I fix this up, if I put 35 grand into it, am I going to be able to get a little bit more for the house? Yeah, absolutely. But I'm not going to bring it up. I want to emphasize like, kind, and quality, because that is really what we're looking at, and that's what we want them to see when we're presenting this model. If they, if they veer off, absolutely. You want to go into that. You want to give them an answer to their question, but at the same time, we don't want to change the argument. Once we start going down that road, it doesn't end well. I've been there. They see this, and then they take the 35 grand off of here and say, okay, 115,000 is what the house is worth, and I'll tell you what, you can have it for 105. You're making $10,000. And it's trying to explain to someone who is not a real estate investor how investing works is really complicated. I mean, I do it a lot. I do it a lot, and I do it for a living, and it's still hard. I talk to people all the time that sit in our classes and see some of the videos and trainings, and it's still difficult to communicate well everything that's involved. Doing that with a homeowner that has one property that they're looking to sell, it's darn near impossible. So it's best to speak in terms that they understand. This is what a property would sell for if it was listed. These are the common deductions that you don't see until you actually sell the property. And this is the profit that I'm looking to make. If I can cut this profit down and we can get a deal, great, let's do it. Yeah.
Question. So, going back to your hypothetical
Yep.
example, the number that you calculated after walking around and doing your deductions
Yep.
is somewhere in between 66 and 95. If we're going back to that hypothetical example.
Yes, sure. Yep.
Because
These are not the same. These are not the same. Yeah, exactly. I'm going to make sure that this number is well below, maybe not well below, but below my offer price enough that I can give them a concession and get rid of this or reduce this significantly and be able to and still make money. That's the bottom line. Okay? Yep.
How long do you typically spend in a seller's property? How long do you spend in them?
There's two things that will happen. Really, there's two things that will happen. The first thing, and the most common, is that I set this up on the phone well enough that I know walking into this property, I pretty much have a contract. That happens a lot. This is the other thing. These are the other deals that you have to work for that are so worth it when you get them. I mean, this is the difference between getting one laydown or two laydowns a month from your marketing and being able to take the exact same amount of marketing dollar and transition it into 4 or 6 properties. I mean, learning this kind of negotiation and presentation, it takes some time, and it's not one of those things that's really comfortable all the time, but it pays well. You know, I mean, you're already spending the money. Why not get the most out of it? Yeah. Good question. So actually, I didn't even answer your question. In this situation, you're probably in there for an hour plus. You're spending time with them. You're becoming friends with them. You're giving them the presentation, telling them about the company, all this kind of stuff. And now we just start talking about numbers. Okay? Yep.
So, so to piggyback on that question, from the time what's the amount of time you spent sort of identifying, marketing, now you're in the seller's house for an hour, and what's the average?
I'm not sure I understand the question. Let's.
How much time do you spend on this property before you get in the door?
Exactly.
Okay, that's a good one. 15 minutes to a half hour. I mean, my prep time before I walk in the house is probably about 20 minutes, where I'm comping, printing out all the materials I'm going to be taking with me, making sure my PowerPoint presentation is representative, stuff like that. But the phone call could be 5 minutes, could be 45 minutes. We could spend a whole, we could do a training on taking the phone call, but generally the phone call is, I'm getting details on the property as quickly as possible and trying to gauge their motivation level, and then rolling that into why they're selling and spending most of the time on why they're selling. If I can identify a why that is motivated enough, I can take it to the next level. And now let's go look at the property, let's talk about details and see how we can get this deal done. Okay? Yeah, but it's all building rapport and determining why they want to sell while you're on the phone, and then when you're in the house. And now we're talking about numbers, but I mean, this is like the most stressful part of the conversation. It's not that stressful. I mean, this is just, you need to make sure that you're pushing them to make a decision one way or another. Okay. What were you going to say, Tony?
How would you, or have you had the question of, okay, well, you started at 95.
Yep.
And you've got all these fees, but if I go with you, you're not having to pay those fees.
That's exactly right. We're making comparison between listing this for a retail buyer and selling it with an agent, and selling it with an investor. Now, I could make a comparison here and go into this and go into all this detail about how much I have to spend for construction, how much my financing fees cost, and how much I got to cut up with my partner, and then I got a holding cost I got to pay you. I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to waste your time. I mean, this would be my response. I'm not going to waste your time on that. Here's what I know. I know that these are the expenses to list with an agent. Okay. The benefits of working with me is that I can close quickly. I can pay you pretty darn close to what an agent can pay, and I can guarantee that we'll get the settlement, as opposed to waiting for somebody, not being sure, wondering what's going to happen, and all this stuff is happening over a 3-4 month process, and you think that you're getting this number, but at the end of the day, you're probably going to get closer to this, I'm willing to make this easy for you. Let's make it easy. Let's work together. Let's get this done, and that's the argument. That's the whole crux of it. It's a good retort, though. Yeah. So the next question that always comes up here, and if it doesn't, I push it to come up. You need a commitment one way or another. If they say, yeah, I can do, all right, let's do 75. 75, you have a hard commitment. Yes, I can do 75. All right, so here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to call my partner, and I'm going to get the okay to do this. If I can do this, we're good to go. All right? Good. Now I'm going to walk into the other room, call my partner. Hey, listen, what do you think about this? It looks like a pretty good deal. You're just deferring the decision. If you don't defer to the decision, they're going to change their mind. If you got 75, 75's the deal. Boom, 75,000. Let's do the deal at 75,000. Great, you have a deal. Wonderful. They go to shake their hand and go, you know what? Can we do 76? No. I can't tell you how many times it happened. You cannot be the decision maker. And it's fun to be the boss, but it's not fun to be the boss. You know, in this situation, you're not the boss. So anyway, now you got a commitment. At this point, as soon as you get a yes, pull out the contracts and lay them next to them, fill them out, and give them a pen. And now continue the conversation. All right? You're going to make an X where they need to sign. The contracts are at REI 360. You can fill them out beforehand with the automatic contract generator. Print them out. You're good to go. If you want to add anything specific, make them in Word documents, whatever. But you have the contracts. You hand them there. Next, we're forcing this into a process. We're going to force them into our process by describing what's going to happen next. That's usually what the question is. Well, what's next? Well, what's next is we have to complete the file. This came from wholesaling. We have a contract. We're going to complete the file. Finish title work. Man, this is... and close. Okay? Oh, man. All right. Okay. So this is our process. And you're doing this with a contract right next to them, and you've already showed them where to sign, and you just keep going with the presentation. Let them be mesmerized by what you're talking about while they're signing the contract. And if they have questions about it, of course you want to go over it. But you want them to be focused on something else instead of feeling all this anxiety about signing their name on a piece of paper. You've done your job to this point. Just let them sign the contract. All right. So now we talk about this. All right. So here's how this works. I have an agreement of sale here. I'm going to send this over to the title company. What they're going to do is they're going to essentially pull a background check on the house. The demographic that I buy properties from, most of them have not. Many of them have not done a traditional real estate transaction in their life. They may own several properties. A lot of times it's stuff that was bought without title insurance, or it was inheritance or something like that. So I try to over-explain this. If you're dealing with a more affluent clientele, it's not necessary to go into a lot of detail with this, but it's just, this is my 2 cents in the conversation. So basically a title, a title search is a background check on the house. Are there any unpaid mortgages? Are there any unpaid taxes, utilities, fees, liens, whatever, both on the house and on you as the owner of the house? These are things the title company is going to look into. You know why? Because at some point in the future, I'm going to want to sell this place. And if these things are not taken care of now, either I'm going to have to pay them or the title company is going to have to pay them at some later date. Okay? I don't want to have to come back to you in 10 years and say, hey, look, you owe me $10,000. That's not going to happen, right? Good. All right. So while this is going on, that can take a couple days. It can take a couple weeks. But while that's going on, we're going to complete our file on the property. What does that mean? Well, it could be anything from getting contractors through the property, getting your funding partners through the property, getting, your end buyer, if you're wholesaling the property, get them through the property. It could mean, getting different vendors, whatever. It means whatever you want it to mean, but completing the file is part of the process. It allows you to buy a little bit more time if you've got some things that you got to get taken care of, okay? Usually I will not usually. I will tell people that I can close within 45 days. What does that mean? That means that we might be closing next Friday. I will probably be prepared to close next Friday, but I'll bet you the title's not ready next Friday. So essentially usually I can close in as little as 10 days, but I want you to hear as the seller that we'll be sitting here in about 45 days. Why? Because if something comes up and it delays the settlement, and I told you 10 days you're going to strangle me, even though it's not my fault. That's how it's going to work out. You have any questions? Does this need to close before 45 days or any of that stuff? These are questions they'll ask you, and this is a good time to answer them. Questions? No? Okay. And from there, the last slide is just information about my company. They've got the settlement or the contract sitting next to them. Say, okay, just sign right here. I'm gonna leave you with a copy, I'm gonna take a copy, and tomorrow you're gonna get an email from me with the title company's information, as well as a digital copy of the original agreement. Is there anything I didn't cover while we're sitting here? Is there anything that I need to be more clear about? And answer any final questions. Shake their hand and say, I really look forward to working with you. I think this is going to be really great. We're going to get this closed really quickly. And the bottom line is, you have my phone number here, and this is my assistant's number. If you can't get in touch with me, contact my assistant. If you have questions regarding the title work, contact the title company directly. Look, there's information from you I don't want. I don't want your social security number. They're going to need this information. But I want to set the table with them that if they have a question on something, they're going to get an immediate answer, or at least relatively immediate. And it's not going to be me that's going to give them to them most of the time. So they're going to call the right person and it'll get taken care of. And that's pretty much it. Most of the time, we're shaking hands. I'm walking out with a contract, and I'm on my way. Everything's cool. That's it. Questions from there? Yeah.
Approximately what percentage of closings?
That is an unfair question.
Wow.
No, it's an unfair question because I run less leads than I might. Okay, I pre-qualify my leads fairly strenuously. I mean, I'm an investor, but I also have 6 other jobs that I do. So my time for running leads is limited. If I was just running leads, I would run a lot more. My closing ratio would be lower, but I do more deals. So usually it's like 75 to 80%, I would say.
If you get in the house.
If I get in the house, yeah,
70,
yeah.
80%.
I would say half the time, it's already a done deal before I go out there, because I know that it's that it's a good deal. It's something I want at relatively the right price point.
Do you discuss, I know this, like you said, this is a different,
Sure.
subject or material itself, but do you discuss any kind of price range on the phone before going there?
Every single house.
Okay,
Okay.
so you discuss-
Yes. Okay. I'm just going to do the script. We have time for that? Yeah, we're running a little bit short, but we're cool. All right. So the script, when somebody calls in, is first I'm getting basic information. I invest in Philadelphia, so I know that most of the houses, they're all row homes. I mean, there are some single families and things like that, so I don't have to get into a lot of detail about property type, and usually it's 2 or 3 stories, how many bedrooms and bathrooms. I asked people to give me a condition on a scale of 1 to 10. 10 being perfect, like Taj Mahal perfect, 1 being a burnout shell. 5s, 6 to 8, I know that the cost of construction is going to be about $25,000 to $35,000. That's anything that is below a 6 is going to be more. Anything more than an 8, I'm probably not going to be able to invest in, because it's either too much emotional attachment, or it's too nice for me to get the discount I want. Okay, so we have that. As they're talking to me, I'm pulling up comps on the phone, or either on my phone or online, and looking at about what the value is. I start with the highest resale price for renovated properties, because that's my anticipated exit. And I'll say, all right, so in this case, it's worth $150,000, 65%, so on and so forth. Regardless of what they're asking, I want to knock something off of that. Most of the time, somebody will say, I'm interested in, I'd like 75, but I take 70 for the house. Okay, so 70 is our bottom line here. Well, in looking at this, my price range is probably somewhere between 30 and 50,000. I know that's a huge window, but you're at 70, I'm at 50. I might be as high as 60, but probably not. If I come in there and I'm at 50 or 55,000, is that something you would accept? Well, yeah, I might accept that. Okay, well, I just knocked $15,000 off their asking price. I didn't even see the house. Now I know that they're motivated. Let's schedule this thing. I'll be there tomorrow or Friday. What's the best time? So, I mean, that's the generalized script, Jason.
How much they owe?
I'm not interested at that point, like the initial call. What's that?
Before they go out there, before you go out there, so I know
Sometimes.
the MLS is
Yeah, sometimes. I mean,
than the ones
I'll look at the MLS and you can see, well, you can see the mortgage liens on the house. That's part of the conversation. Like when I start talking about motivation and things like that, I'll ask how much they owe. Is there any liens, mortgages, unpaid utilities on the property? It's pretty common in Philadelphia to have like tax liens or utility liens. So that's one thing I discuss either on the phone or in person with them. The idea that, hey, look, I might be giving you X amount of dollars, but you know, these are things that can be against the property that have to get paid off from these funds. But yeah, I mean, most of the negotiation is started, well, not most of it, it started on the phone. And about 50% of the time, I know whether or not I'm going to get the contract before I even go in the house. This whole, you know, presentation that we went through tonight is more of like grunt work negotiating stuff that ends up, as I said, it turns stuff that wouldn't be deals into deals just by putting a little bit of extra effort into it. And it's important to keep in mind whether you're going into something where you think you have a done deal or not. Yeah.
Yeah, like you said before, have your monthly marketing costs, whatever it may be, getting 4 deals,
Right.
you're doing the extra effort versus the 2 like lay down deals.
Right.
I mean, it's huge.
It
It's double.
makes so much sense, right? Why wouldn't you do it? You know.
Your return on the same marketing spend.
Yeah, yeah. One thing that I want to push on, I had a situation in December. I put 11 properties under contract and I missed 2 deals. The 2 deals I missed are still driving me crazy, and they were with repeat customers, and both of them were because I didn't take my my packet with me. I wasn't prepared for the appointment. Always be prepared. I don't care if you bought, this one guy I bought 6 properties from. We had a handshake deal. I didn't have a contract with me, and one of my competitors followed right behind me. He offered him $8,000 more, and the guy signed a contract on the spot. So, you know, it kills me, but it happens, you know. Make sure you have your credibility packet, your contracts ready to go. If it's not inked, it's not a deal.